Well, hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much again for checking out this video. I really appreciate it. And as you can see from the title, I am going to be interviewing Jonathan Doe, the director of The Art of Self-Harm. I've already done my interview with White Gardenia, Daniel Valiant, so go and check that out, and it is on Spotify. I will leave all of the relevant links down below in the description, and including Jonathan Doe's social media, where you can find him, where you can buy this movie, and so forth and so on. Now, I've had my podcast for a very long time. Now, I just give it a thought a couple of weeks ago of thinking, you know what? A lot of people have got YouTube these days, not just Spotify. Some people don't have Spotify or Apple iTunes or Apple Podcasts. So I thought, instead of just sticking to the podcasts for 2024, mix it up a little bit and add my YouTube in the mix. So that way people have got the best of both worlds. So if they want to listen to it on Spotify while they're driving their car going somewhere, or they want to watch the YouTube video but just listen at the same time, that's what they can do as well. So this is why I am introducing my first ever interview on my YouTube channel with Jonathan Doe. Now, Jonathan is going to go into who he is, why he done this movie and everything like that. So we're just going to crack on and do this. As a little side note, you will see I have Freddy Krueger, Sweet Dreams in a frame now, and also my Halloween Michael Myers in a frame as well, as you can see. So yeah, I'm super glad I've put them in there, and for the purpose of this video I thought it was quite fitting. So I'm not just going to have these pictures in here for Halloween, it's going to be all year round from this point on. So yeah, so without further ado, let's move on to the interview.
Hey Christy, I'm sorry that it took so long for me to get this to you. I appreciate you putting me on your podcast and promoting the film. That's really cool. I saw what you did with Daniel, and I'm happy to kind of like talk more about it. So I guess to start off, I will introduce myself. Hey everybody, my name is Jonathan Doe. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a podcaster. I'm a YouTuber. I host the YouTube channels Cinema's Underbelly, as well as Murderbilia Show and Tell, the podcast The Uneasy Train Explorers Club, and the distribution label Vile Video Productions. And all of those different endeavors exist under my parent company, Putrid Productions, where I make all of my different art, make my movies, as well as release and distribute works from other people within the transgressive underground art movement. So thanks for having me on.
Grab yourself a cuppa and let's move on to the interview. So, Jonathan, when it came to the idea of this documentary in particular, was it talking to White Gardenia that inspired this documentary, or did you have the idea already and presented it to White Gardenia?
So I first became aware of White Gardenia after hearing about the movie Split, which was kind of a collaboration between Jack Mulvarnity and Daniel Valiant. And I had heard that in it a guy cuts his finger off. And so I bought Split just out of curiosity. But like a lot of the lore and like rumors and stuff that you hear within the underground, I had heard that this happened on film. But what I've found throughout my exploring all of this underground disturbing stuff is usually it's too good to be true. Like usually when you hear about some horrific scene in a movie or anything like that, when you actually see it, it doesn't live up to the hype. It doesn't live up to the urban legends about it. But then when I sat down and I'm watching the White Gardenia segment in Split, which was called Torture Theater, you actually see Daniel cut his finger off, and for real, with a hatchet. And I was taken aback. I was like, oh my god, like I can't believe it. Like these people are crazy. To the point where I was actually like kind of frightened of them, like, and had tons of questions. I wanted to know more about them. And so I invited Daniel and Allison from White Gardenia to both be on my podcast to interview them. And I just had a million questions, and they were super transparent. They shared everything with me. They let me know. And during that podcast episode, Daniel, I asked what happened to his finger after he cut his finger off. And he told me that they had it, and that a lot of people had reached out with an interest in buying it. And but he didn't know the legality around that. And I explained to him, as a person who collects oddities, as a person who collects human remains and things like that, that it is legal. It's where the legality comes down to is it ethically sourced, and the fact that it's his finger and he chose to cut it off and he consented to cutting it off. He has the autonomy to do whatever he wants with it. And that if he does choose to sell it, I would definitely be interested. And we ended up making a deal, and he actually sold me his finger. And when I got it in the mail and saw, yep, he really did cut his finger off, this is a real human finger, I went, these people need a documentary. This is too crazy not for more people to know about it. And so then I basically contacted Daniel again and said, hey man, how do you feel about doing a documentary? And he was game. So I just had to jump at the opportunity, basically. And my body of work up until that point had been just the fetish gore films that I had made, the Erotic Grotesque Nonsense trilogy that I made. And so I wanted to kind of branch out as a filmmaker into other categories, other genres and stuff. And so I wanted to dive into the world of documentaries, and I wanted to make a splash. I wanted to make something that was going to be a punch in the gut, because the art that I make is a punch in the gut. And so what better way to jump into the world of documentaries than to make a film about art group who engages in self-mutilation. So that's kind of where the idea came from.
Right, okay, so why did you decide to do this documentary instead of a feature-length film?
Well, White Gardenia has a large body of work, and it's spread out within different anthologies and different types of releases and stuff. And so there really wasn't any kind of definitive collection of their work. They did come out with Mutilation Theater, which is 4 hours of just basically raw footage of the stuff that they had done. But unless you had kind of done the research and really kind of wrapped your head around what White Gardenia is, there wasn't something that kind of was an entry point into who they were or really explained who they were. So I really wanted to make something that kind of not only highlighted all of their most notable achievements, the things that they've done, but also to sit down and talk with them and go, well, what was it like to cut your finger off? What was it like to eat your labia? What was it like to stab a nail through your hand? What is the philosophy and beliefs behind this? Why are you making this kind of art? What do you get out of it? And I also wanted to know, what is the prep work for this? What is the pre-production on a White Gardenia scene like? And what is it like shooting it? What is the attitude on set? How do people feel? And what is it like afterwards? And so I wanted to answer all those questions, and the best way to answer those questions was through a documentary.
Now, what happened in that documentary was pretty brutal. So did you express to White Gardenia what you wanted on screen, or was it all White Gardenia's ideas?
I told Daniel that I wanted to discuss all of the most notable segments within their body of work. The two biggest ones that stand out is when Cherokee cuts off her labia and eats it, and when Daniel cuts off his pinky. But also there's other segments involving Allison cutting up her breasts, or Daniel nailing a hammer through his hand, things like that. So that I knew that there were like areas of their work that I wanted to definitely address and highlight within the documentary. But I did ask Daniel, I said, can you do a performance, a self-mutilation performance, and have me be there? Because I want to shoot the whole process. I want to shoot the prep. I wanted to shoot everyone's kind of what was everyone's demeanor, what was everyone's kind of mental state leading up to shooting a scene like that, and then what was it like afterwards. And so that was an important part of the documentary. And so I told Daniel that I would like them to do some form of self-mutilation while I was out there, but they had the freedom to do whatever they wanted to do. And Daniel actually kept it almost like a secret for a while about what they were going to do. I was kind of going in there blind. I didn't know what was going to happen. I just knew that something was going to happen. And eventually I got put in the loop shortly before I got out there that Daniel wanted to nail his scrotum to the table. But I didn't know the intricacies of it. I didn't know that he wanted to do a candelabra. I didn't know that he wanted to make it comical. I didn't know he wanted to put anything in there. I was essentially a fly on the wall just to be present. And it wasn't until we were actually there to shoot it that he asked me to do cinematography and actually be the cameraman. I was assuming that someone else was going to be shooting their footage and I was going to be behind the scenes shooting. But he actually asked me to shoot the actual scene. And so, but to answer your question, I didn't want to influence anything. I wanted to just be present and document White Gardenia production as it was. I didn't want to influence anything that anybody did, and I didn't have any say in how things went, what the idea was, or anything. I was just there, and the only thing I did was I filmed. So that was that.
Now, why did you want to work specifically with White Gardenia?
Mainly because I make films based on the opportunities that are given to me, and I found them to be interesting people, and I went, well, basically when in Rome, I've made a relationship with these people. I think that they're interesting. I think that they're a group of people who deserve to be documented. They need to be there. They stand out from the rest of society, and that's the thing that I'm interested in. That's what my podcast is about, the Uneasy Train Explorers Club. I want to explore the fringe of society, the underbelly of society, and document it. I want to dive down into communities and categories that the mainstream doesn't see. And so the fact that I had discovered these people and formed a relationship with these people, I thought I would do a good job. One thing that I think is lost within journalism recently, and why I wanted to get into making documentaries, is I feel like journalism has become very subjective and not objective. That you see the anchorman and he's telling you what he thinks about it, and everyone is twisting the narrative for their opinion. And I think one thing that's lost within journalism is people just not presenting the facts as the facts and allowing the audience to decide how they feel about it. And so that's what I wanted to do with White Gardenia, because I know that the subject of self-mutilation is a divisive subject, and people have strong feelings about it on both sides. And so I wanted to just present this art group who does this as they are. And my whole point, my whole hope in making the documentary was for no one to ever know what does Jonathan Doe think about this group. I just wanted to go, here is an interesting group of people and this is what they like to do, and that there is no opinion behind it. It's just this exists, and take away what you want from it. And so that's why I wanted to center on them, because I felt like they were interesting and I felt like I could present them in a very objective way.
At any point in the making of this documentary, did you feel uncomfortable, or did you have to stop filming it at any point because it was just simply too much?
I will be honest, when I first learned about White Gardenia and just saw how far these people were willing to go, I did feel a sense of uncomfortableness, because I just didn't know where their boundaries were. Like, what is too far? What is the line, you know? If they're willing to cut body parts off and eat body parts and do all this kind of stuff, are they willing to do this to other people? You know, do they honor things like consent? Like, what? This is an unknown territory for me. I'm about to jump into these people's world that I'm unfamiliar with, and I don't know the rules of the game with them. And so when I first knew that I was going to make a documentary with them, I did feel a little nervous. Like, what am I getting into? Are these people dangerous? I don't know. Like, I talked to them and done interviews with them, but I really didn't know like where they stood when it came, like, especially like if you think about like the world of BDSM and things like that, there's like a code of ethics that you follow, you know. There's safe words and there's consent and there's all of that. But this was kind of like an unknown territory for me, and so I didn't really know what to expect. And so I was a little nervous the first day shooting with them. But once I spent some time with them, I did I got to know them and realized that these people aren't dangerous to anyone but themselves, and they do care about consent, and they do care about the rules that exist within similar circles like BDSM dungeons and things like that. And so, and there was lots of dialogue and discussion about how to make sure that everybody stayed safe and things of that nature. So I quickly, once I kind of got to know them, I was totally okay with these people, and I was like, okay. And there was nothing that I shot with them that made me feel like, once I felt assured that I was safe and that these people were consenting to be a part of everything that they were doing, then I'm not one to judge or care. Like, whatever you want to do. Like, if you guys want to do something weird and you guys are all up for it and no one's being exploited or hurt, then fuck yeah, let's do it. I'm not really one to judge people's lifestyles very much.
Now, what was the overall process like from start to finish making this documentary for my audience?
Well, I mean, whether it's a documentary or whether it's a narrative film, there's 3 stages within filmmaking. So there's pre-production, production, and post-production. Pre-production is just basically doing all the prep work that you need to do to get ready to do production, and then there's production, which is actually shooting everything, and then there's post-production, which is the editing and all of that. And I would say pre-production and post-production are the hardest part of filmmaking. It's making sure that everything's ready. Pre-production is sitting there. I had to do a lot of research, watching and familiarizing myself with White Gardenia's filmography and knowing what stood out and what didn't. And there was a lot of things within their filmography that had never been released to the public yet, or was very obscure, that was featured in the documentary. for example, the second time that Daniel and Allison they shot a wraparound for a very obscure anthology that featured Daniel cooking his finger and eating a part of it again. Well, not many people knew about that. So I had to have lots of conversations with Daniel about, can you give me all of your body of work? And then I had to sit and watch. They had hours and hours of material that they had made. And so I had to sit, watch all that, and dissect what was significant to keep in the documentary. And then I live in California. I had to fly to Montana and get all that set up. And so there was a lot of prep work leading up to finally making it out to Montana. And I can't remember how long I was out in Montana. I think I was out there for about a week. And we had a lot of interviews to do, a lot of stuff to shoot. And so it was just go time during production. I was meeting up with them every single day, mostly with Daniel. There were a limited amount of days that I had with Cherokee. And then I think I only had one day with Allison. So everything done with Allison had to be shot in one day. And all of that was shot. We shot in Bozeman, Montana, and we shot in Anaconda, Montana. And Bozeman and Anaconda are, I think, like 3 hours away from each other. And so it was a lot of driving around, going all over the place. So there was a lot of that, and just making sure, like, okay, I only have this many days with Cherokee. I only have this one day with Allison. I got to make sure that I have all my questions because I don't have another chance with these people. And Allison and Cherokee are both very private people, so I was really privileged in getting to be there and talk with them. So I had to make sure that I got everything I possibly could need for the documentary while I was with them. And then it was easier you'll notice in the documentary that I interview Daniel in a lot of different locations because I had the most time with him. So I was able to kind of focus. I was able to be more flexible with his schedule. And I would say the hardest part then was, and this is the same with any movie, is now you've got this accumulation of footage, and it's usually hours and hours of footage. I think I had like 40 hours of footage that I needed to shave down into 2 hours. And so the hardest part was post-production, which was just sitting and grinding and working through this documentary. And I know people have talked about the duration of the documentary, that it's 2 hours long. It's pretty long, but I honestly, there was a lot more I could have put in there, and in order to really tell their story and give you a full picture, the 2 hours was the shortest I was able to do, but I wouldn't change a single thing. I think for those who actually really like the documentary, those 2 hours fly by pretty quick, and it maintains being interesting the entire time. And I think I was able to present a very complete and honest picture about who White Gardenia is and what inspires them to do what they do.
Was there any precautions in place in case of any part of the shooting process that it had to stop?
I asked Daniel and I asked Cherokee, because they were there for the scene that I was there for, which is nailing Daniel's testicles to the table. What was the safe word? And they had a phrase that if Daniel said it, then it meant stop. And I asked him what criteria had to be in place in order for us to take him to the hospital. And he said he's never had to go to the hospital, and that he has no intention of going to the hospital, and that he's going to be safe about it. So we did a lot of proactive things to make sure that he would be safe, like buying clean materials. Everything that was utilized was brand new. There was a lot of isopropyl alcohol that was used to sanitize everything. And you get to see all that in the documentary, that we did take a lot of precautions to make sure that he was safe. But again, I wanted to just be kind of a fly on the wall. It's not I don't want to influence anything. So I just want White Gardenia to present like this is what a production is like, whether I'm there or not. This is how they do it. So I mostly ask questions, but I tried not to affect how they do things. I wanted everyone, myself and the audience, to see this is how they do it.
For those that may not have heard of your name, can you give the audience an overview of who you are, what you do, and are there any current projects taking place at the moment?
Yeah, so I'm Jonathan Doe. I am a filmmaker. I most notably directed the EGN trilogy, the Erotic Grotesque Nonsense trilogy, which features the films Barf Bunny, The Degenerates, and Defilement of a Porcelain Doll. All three of those films are homages to various fetish gore films, and they explore different fetishes. So Barf Bunny is centered around the fetish of emetophilia, which is the fetish of vomit. The Degenerates is centered around the fetish of necrophilia and hybristophilia. Hybristophilia is the fetish of people who are dangerous, being attracted to people like murderers and serial killers and things like that. And then Defilement of a Porcelain Doll explores the fetish of sailorophilia. Sailorophilia is the fetish of taking something beautiful and making it dirty or making it disgusting, basically defiling it. And so each film follows like different narratives and explores different genres. So Barf Bunny is very connected with kind of like almost like bimbo, cartoony, absurdist cartoon and goofy splatter pornography, I guess. It's almost like a Bugs Bunny cartoon met a plushie met, I don't know. It's almost like I compared it to like Bugs Bunny meets Pink Flamingos. And then The Degenerates is my love letter to pseudo snuff films. So it is very much like films like Musani or August Underground, but it's a lot more sexually explicit and focused on a couple who is taking pleasure in engaging with a mutilated corpse. And then Defilement of a Porcelain Doll is has a lot of influence with the first two guinea pig films, especially The Devil's Experiment. So that definitely, I had those influences there. I also am a podcaster. So my podcast is called the Uneasy Train Explorers Club, and I interview different walks of life that have been just notable people from different communities. So I've interviewed serial killers, I've interviewed crime scene cleaners, I've interviewed porn stars, I've interviewed cannibals, I've interviewed other people in the extreme horror community, just different walks of life, people that exist on the fringe, and what their life is like. And so I've got that podcast, and then I've got my two YouTube channels, Cinema's Underbelly, where I analyze and review extreme underground cinema, and another YouTube channel called Murderbilia Show and Tell, where I show different items from my Murderbilia collection. So I collect artifacts related to different true crime cases, and so I might pick up an item that's in my collection. For example, I have like an original wanted poster for Ted Bundy. I haven't done an episode on it yet. You could see it right there. It's right next to me. So I could pick that up and I'd say, hey, this is an original artifact related to this case, and then talk about the case. And I've done interviews with survivors from different tragedies, as well as murders themselves. So I've done interviews with one of the survivors from the Aurora theater shooting, the Batman movie theater shooting. I've done interviews with Nico Clow, who's the Vampire of Paris, who's a murderer and a cannibal. So I do that. And then I also distribute my own movies through my label Vile Video Productions, as well as films from other filmmakers within the extreme horror underground. And all of these different endeavors that I do, all these different things that I do, exist under my parent company called Putrid Productions. So I'm the founder of Putrid Productions, and everything that I do is Putrid Productions. All that stuff I just described as Putrid Productions.
For those that haven't seen the special features on this DVD, there is a segment that you showcase an educational rundown of how you preserve objects. You preserved White Gardenia's little finger, or pinky. Can you talk more about the segment, why you preserved White Gardenia's finger?
Yeah, so I am outside of being like a filmmaker and collecting horror movies and true crime artifacts, I also have a big passion for collecting oddities and rarities and things of that nature. And one of my favorite hobbies to do is collect wet specimens. So if you have a specimen, which is something that's dead, there's a multitude of different ways that you can preserve it. So you can mummify it, you can preserve it in resin, you can strip it from its bones and preserve its skeleton, or you can preserve it as a wet specimen. And wet specimens are my favorite. Those are the dead things that you see floating in jars. And I have quite a large wet specimen collection. I'll like pick up roadkill off the street, or buy things from hunters and things like that are wet specimens. And there's a process of preserving it. You have to get something that's called formalin, which is similar to like formaldehyde, and you have to inject the specimen in this formalin solution and soak it in there, and it'll take the tissue and prevent it from rotting. It'll slow the decomposition process almost to a halt, and it'll allow it, if you do it correctly, it'll allow you to preserve this thing for a long time, longer than I'm alive. If you preserve it right, it could be something that you pass down to future generations, like your children and your children's children. And I think there's a beauty in that. And I have a major fascination with death. Thanatology is the study of death, and it's almost like a sociological exploration into the different attitudes and cultures and beliefs that people have around death. So I'm really fascinated with the study of thanatology, and so I guess making wet specimens is a major passion of mine. And so when I bought Daniel's finger, it was just being kept in a freezer. And so I did a lot of research, like how can I preserve this so that it's forever? Because I think it's a unique piece of cinematic history. It's a unique piece of human history. It's a one-of-a-kind thing. And so I wanted to preserve it, but it's also something that I have a passion for. And so I took it as an opportunity, as something to be interested in, to fit into the documentary. But also I used it as a special feature. So there's a shorter segment of it in the documentary where you see me preserving it, but there's a special feature that's much longer where I show different wet specimens that I have, and then kind of almost do like an educational video showing the process of preserving the finger and how it turned out. And it is now, Daniel's finger is now a part of my permanent collection. I have a lot of various human remains that I've obtained over the years. You can see them all above me. So there's like a skull, there's this skull pieces and a bunch of other stuff up there. All ethically sourced, of course, just like Daniel's finger. But yeah, it's a part of. I love film conservation. I love death conservation. I'm just a conservation kind of guy. So, and I'm glad that I added that to the documentary, because for a lot of people, that segment of me preserving that finger, some people said, was more disturbing than anything else that was shown in there. So that's really cool.
Can you tell my audience more about your career as a director? What gave you the drive to be a director in the first place?
I've wanted to be a filmmaker since I was a little kid. I grew up with a dad who worked in media, so we always had like blank VHS tapes like laying around and stuff, and I would go into his office and I'd steal the VHS tapes and I would wrap them in paper and draw like fake covers for movies that I wanted to make when I was a kid. And so, I mean, honestly, since I was a little boy, like I saw Jurassic Park and Titanic when I was a kid, and I was so swept away by the stories in those films. I wanted to create that magic too. I wanted to make something, but I suffered a traumatic brain injury when I was a little kid, and I had a seizure disorder that I had until I was about 13, and the part of my brain that was damaged is the left temporal lobe of my brain, and there's something called temporal lobe psychosis that comes from temporal lobe epilepsy. So I saw a lot of crazy, when I would have seizures when I was a little kid, I would have these crazy hallucinations and see this really scary shit, and the world was just really terrifying to me. And I learned through renting videos and watching horror movies that I could take control of my fear. So I would rent things that scared me, and having it on a VHS tape, I was able to pause it and rewind it, and I was able to gain autonomy on something I didn't have control of in my normal life, which was seeing crazy shit that scared me. And so I just grew to have a love for horror, and wanted to make horror. And honestly, I think the movies that I make are a cathartic way for me to like express and explore scary and intrusive thoughts that I've had in my life. And I feel like once I am able to have that cathartic experience, it's almost like I'm free from it. And so the two just went hand in hand. Like I wanted to be a filmmaker when I was little, but I also found it to be therapeutic. And so those are the reasons that inspired me to be a filmmaker. And now when I have those demons in my head, instead of letting them taunt me and haunt me, I am able to go, oh, that would make a really good movie, or that would make a good painting, or that would make a good whatever. So that's what it inspires me to be a filmmaker.
Is there any advice you'd like to give to an aspiring director or aspiring directors?
Yeah, I mean, just go out there and fucking do it. You don't even need to buy a camera. You have a smartphone. We all have cameras in our pockets. Turn your phone sideways and start recording stuff with your friends. Just like any other craft, you're going to suck at it at first. It's like learning to cook, or it's like learning to ride a bike, or learning to do whatever. You might have this grand plan in your mind. You know, you might want to learn guitar and want to be in a band, but you have to fucking learn your chords first. You got to learn the craft first. You need to making a movie is taking lots of little ingredients and putting them together. You know, you have to learn to shoot B-roll. You have to learn to hide different cuts and edits. You have to learn to do different things, and it all comes from just experimenting and making mistakes and learning from those mistakes. So Don't go and try to make a fucking band when you don't know how to play guitar yet. Don't go and try to make a cake when you don't even know the ingredients yet. Don't go and try to make a movie. You might have $1 million idea in your head, but you don't know shit yet. So go learn shit. Go out there and start practicing. Go start recording stuff. Be ready to make mistakes. You know, your first movie's gonna fucking suck. Like, go into it knowing that. We all have to start somewhere. And I think a big mistake that a lot of people make is they want Hollywood to knock on their door and give them $1 million budget. But why should they do that? Who the fuck are you? Go prove yourself. Go learn something. And go out there and learn how long it takes to make a movie. It takes a long time. It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of long nights, but you can do it. It's all about whether you want to. I have a saying that I say for a lot of different things, that there's sayers and there's doers in the world. You can sit and say all you want that you're going to learn guitar, or you're going to say all you want that you're going to take that trip to Egypt, or you're going to say all you want that you're going to one day make a movie. And everyone sits, the sayers say, once I have this, once I buy a camera, once I buy a guitar, once I have the time, once I whatever. Those are all excuses. Just go do it. Like, work with what you have. And that's what I've done as a filmmaker, is I look around my environment. What resources do I have right now? And I go, okay, I have this person who is willing to be in the movie, and I have this fucking field that I can shoot in, and I have a bucket of fake blood. What narrative can I make with those things? I think the mistake that people make is they'll sit down and they'll come up with this elaborate, expensive, crazy idea where they need 1 million people and they need all of the special effects and all that stuff. And until they get that stuff, they're never going to pick up a camera. Fuck that. Like, look around at what you have. I've got a room, and I've got a person. There's a lot of great movies that have been made that only took place in a room with one person, you know? Get creative and work with what you have in your environment. And maybe the first couple of things you make suck, but at least you did something. At least you've got some practice under your belt. And just keep grinding, keep trying, and you'll get better and better. And you'll start making connections with people, and you'll start getting those resources that you didn't have before. But you have to start somewhere. So my advice is start, and stop waiting for all the stars to align for you to start. Just fucking start. Start working with what you have.
Can you go into detail about Jonathan Doe, the guy before the director, where you grew up and what your other passions are?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about this already. I was a kid that had a traumatic brain injury, had a lot of anxiety, had a lot of fears, and learned through horror to use it as a tool for me to kind of overcome a lot of the phobias and anxiety that I have. And I'm still a guy that has struggles with different things, and I have learned to use art to kind of overcome a lot of that stuff. But I make transgressive art for a reason. I think that we all have demons, and we all have different ways to work with those demons and explore that stuff. And I think it's about finding healthy and socially appropriate ways to do that, you know? So if you've got a lot of aggression, go join a gym, or go start doing martial arts, or I love death metal. I love going into mosh pits. There's something really freeing about being in that environment where the music is just so fucking loud and you're just being pummeled with sensory overload that you can't even think. And there's like a peace with that you can almost, like, you can't turn your brain off, but you can drown it out. And that's something that I really love about all these different extreme forms of artwork. Or I think one of the reasons that extreme cinema is so powerful is it allows you to explore these darker parts of the human condition in a safe way. So instead of being violent or surrounding yourself with violence, you can explore it in a way where it is consensual, where it is ethical, where it is safe. And I think that that's the same reason why people engage in extreme things like BDSM. It's being able to explore these things in a safe way. And I think that's why Jonathan Doe exists, is the part of me that it's the part of me that is free, and doesn't worry or care about social judgments or social taboos, because I think everybody has a curiosity when it comes to this kind of stuff. There's a reason why one of the most popular genres on Netflix is true crime. I think we all have a fascination with the darker parts of being a human being, and a lot of people hide it and shame it and mask it in a bunch of different things. I mean, we all like to explore those things to different degrees. It's why Halloween is such a popular holiday, but I think some people get their fix for that one day, and some people need that fix for their whole life, you know. And it's cool that this stuff exists. I don't really know where I'm getting at, but yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is I think that this art's important, and I think that it is actually helpful to people. I think it's therapeutic, and Jonathan Doe is a person that has grown out of the necessity for all of that.
Now, Jonathan, last question. Can you please share what your social media is, where people can find you? And thank you so much for doing this interview once again. I highly appreciate it.
Yeah, you guys can find me on X. It's X/putrid_prod. I'm also on Instagram, putrid_productions. I'm on Facebook as Jonathan Doe. My YouTube channel, Cinema's Underbelly, and Murderbilia Show and Tell, and then my podcast, which you can find on Spotify or pretty much any other platform where they have podcasts, which is the Uneasy Train Explorers Club podcast. And I really appreciate you having me on, and keep up the good work, Christy. I think it's cool that you promote this art and everything like that. All right, have a good one.